All right, good morning and welcome to CDBG Connect. This is our second session, and we are so glad to have each of you joining us this morning. The session is being recorded. My name is Angie Taylor. I work with the CDBG team in the Lincoln office of DED, and we are here to talk about how to submit a great grant. And we're going to be talking about what the process looks like as far as applying for a CDBG grant. We're going to explain a bit about how the scoring process works to you. And then we'll talk about what the process looks like if you are awarded a grant and what that looks like. So again, if you are just joining us, we invite you to open the chat pane because we're going to be sending several messages through chat for you so that you can have helpful resources right at your fingertips. And we're going to be introducing the rest of our team very briefly, but just a couple pieces of housekeeping as we get started. The folks that you're going to be hearing today are all of our CDBG teammates, and I thank them in advance for their wonderful contributions to this session. We encourage you to participate in that chat window initially. Everyone's going to be muted here in the meeting for the time being as we go through the presentation. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be allowing a time for question and answers at the end. So make sure you have that chat pane open. And at this time, we want you to go ahead and introduce yourselves. So please go ahead and tell us your name, where you're joining from, what organization you're with. This gives you a chance to meet other folks from across the state that are doing similar work to you. We want to give you all a chance to get to know one another. So our purpose is to bring everyone together for a learning opportunity as well as a network opportunity. And the format will be that we'll present content up front related to today's topic. And then we hope to allow time at the end for a chance for questions, for networking, and give folks a chance to really see who's part of our community that stretches so far edge to edge across the state. So again, today's recording will be shared after today, probably by tomorrow, sometime in the next day or so. It'll be posted to DED's website, to the CDBG page. So if you go there, you'll find that recording in the next day or so. So as we get started, we're going to go ahead and just briefly review what we talked about last time in session 1. And that was, how do you do pre-application work before the application window even opens? What do you need to do to get ready to apply for a CDBG grant? And if you missed that session, don't worry. That recording is available on the CDBG website. We're going to put those links in chat here. If they're not already there, you'll get them shortly. So just to kind of get your brain warmed up and then ready to launch into today's topic, remember that last time we said there were 3 main steps to get ready for a grant. The first one was to define the community's needs. So take an assessment, look at what the community really has identified as priorities and projects that need to be addressed. And then step 2 was to take a close look by summarizing that need, and then look at a bunch of options that might solve whatever problem or issue or project that needs to happen within your community. While the third step is jumping into a closer analysis of identifying what kinds of solutions are available, not just CDBG, but what are all the solutions available to help you address and remedy that identified problem. And so we talked about what you would need to do, such as a gap analysis, meaning maybe you have a $700,000 project. You can only get a certain amount of funds from CDBG. How would you close that funding gap and carefully think about how your project can be successful? So then we encouraged you to narrow to a specific solution. And really that first session applies to any kind of a grant, not just CDBG, because you'll notice that in that process, we weren't talking about a specific grant, although it does apply for our purposes and we tailored it for our specific program. But really, you'll notice that we didn't get into the weeds about, all of the exhibits or what kind of paperwork is done. That's not what that session was about. It was sharing a concept with you. You're going to find that related information here as well. We're going to drill down a little bit and look at CDBG. So today, titled Submit a Great Grant, and these are the three main areas we will be helping cover with you today. So how do you apply for a CDBG grant? What does the timing of that look like? How do you go about starting that process? And then once the applications are submitted, how do we score them here at DED? What are we looking for? What are the criteria we use, especially in a competitive cycle where we might receive a lot of great applications? How do we know which ones rise to the top? Okay, that's what we're going to be telling you, because if you understand going into it what we're looking for, then you can help paint a vivid picture for the scorers to understand exactly what it is that you and your community are trying to achieve. And then finally, if you do get awarded or approved is the word we call, okay, then you will go through what's called an award process. So right out of the gate, how will you be successful to start implementing the different pieces to your project that will help it get off to a solid start and get that funding available to your community? So we're going to be talking about applying, and Gina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Nicole. So as Angie has said, we're kind of giving you a bird's eye view of this process, digging in a little bit more, and then when we get to application guidelines training, which is coming in June, we're going to dig in even farther. And that date tentatively is June 4th. We're waiting on congressional or that allocation from the Congress. So you'll see more details about that coming up. But this is an overview. We're talking about applying for a grant, talk about what projects are eligible and ineligible. Make sure you understand that. You will hear me say this today and many times in the future. Make sure you're communicating with your program rep. I know and you know the applications take a lot of work to prepare and to submit. We want to make sure you're on the right page, so be in contact. You're going to want to be very clear about application deadlines. We'll talk more about those in just a moment. Identify the program goal. Everything we do in CDB is driven off a need. So what's the need and that you have to meet and the goal of the application? Identify project-specific goals, again, very detailed in what exactly within you have a great need, and this is what we are after. Citizen participation, very important that the citizens be involved. As a department, we're taking an increased look at citizen participation in this way, that what you communicate to them is what you actually make happen or what you can request from CDBG. So making sure that those are handled in a way that the citizens are communicated to accurately. And finally, application guidelines and exhibits that you need to do an application in Amplifund for submission. How do you round those things up? Where do you find those exhibits? And the application guidelines, again, I will say will be given to you or will be available to you in the early part of June.
Thanks, Gina. My name is Nicole Bartles. I'm the CDBG program manager here at DED. And so I am tasked with telling you kind of where our goals for our program come out of. And so as a state, we develop a consolidated plan that's every 5 years. And from that, we identify goals throughout the state that CDBG can maybe help with. And these are the two goals that are currently with our consolidated plan that was from 2020 to 2024. And so it was to enhance public facilities and infrastructure and to encourage economic development. Within those two goals that were in the plan, that's then when we decide how to do how we're going to design the program. And that is then based off of the next slide, Angie, if you wouldn't mind moving to our eligible activities. And so these are the eligible activities that HUD has identified that we then incorporate into the opportunities that we open up. So a lot of these are, you can see, it would be helping with different public facilities, which is like senior centers, childcare centers, libraries, youth centers, neighborhood facilities. And we do have an opportunity for public works infrastructure, which then helps with street improvements, flood and water and waste issues and improvements. And we have a planning opportunity, we have a downtown revitalization opportunity, and then we have a tourism opportunity as well as economic development. And so those opportunities then encompass all of these eligible activities.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Gina, what's the next slide?
Excellent. We talked earlier, as promised, I was talking about application guidelines, deadlines. Application deadlines, I should say. Through the deadlines for applications, you'll notice the first two are economic development and tourism, and those do not have a deadline because they are open cycle grants. You can apply for them at any time during the year. Economic development is run by Tom Stevens. Tourism development is run by Nicole Bartles. I would highly encourage you to be in contact with them if that's something you're considering applying for, and they can lead you down that path. The remainder of the grant opportunities, public works, infrastructure, public works facilities, planning, and downtown revitalization have a deadline of September 15th for applications. And you can go all the way up to 11:59 to submit those applications. But you should also know that September 15th is a Sunday. So I'm going to hope that you're going to consider September 13th to actually be your deadline for submission.
Next, we're going to talk about identifying the project goal. So there are some key parts of this that you want to take into consideration. Reviewing the overall purpose with your project design. So that includes in the application guidelines, clearly referencing existing or identified problems or conditions in the community or the project location, and how are you going to solve that problem? How are these funds that you're requesting going to help with the overall purpose? Then identify what the overall need is. So is there a specific need to address something within the community? Do you have something that needs to be further looked at? Definitely look at what that overall need is. Then you'll want to, when you're creating your application, look at defining success. What is that project impact? And we have a slide later that'll go into more detail of this, but this is, what are your goals and objectives? What are you actually trying to achieve? You'll want to maybe look at if you have any community plans. So do you have a comprehensive plan? Do you have a downtown revitalization plan on hand? Do you have any strategic plans that might be of assistance to help you identify what type of project you want to pursue? Program guidelines. A lot of this won't have program guidelines other than our downtown revitalizations. It's kind of a unique thing that we encompass a program guidelines with that, and that is where we allow the awardee to kind of set up how are they going to award those businesses that are part of the downtown revitalization process. And again, like Gina said, we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail with this, but that is also included within our application webinar that will be held at a later date. Another one is to analyze the problem statement. So you'll kind of want to see, you know, are there key elements within that ERR or the environmental review that you maybe need to look at and maybe see if you need to address those. And then you'll want to understand the national objective. CDBG does have a national objective directive, and a project is not eligible unless you meet a national objective. And those national objectives are low and moderate income, slum and blight, and urgent need. And we'll go into more details with that later. I'm going to actually turn it over to Tom, who's going to talk about the, how to identify a project team.
Good morning. Okay, so when you're starting the process, you want to get the key players lined up. Who's going to write the application to the CDBG grant? There's a lot of work involved. There's key documents you want to familiarize yourself with that may involve high-level signatures. There may be processes we have to go through that take time. You want to plan for those. So understand who's going to do that. The key person is often the CDBG certified administrator. That those may be procured or could be a staff employee of the city or county, for instance. And then who is the local contact, so that at all times when we're doing emails or having small discussions, we want to make sure these people stay in the loop and are informed of what's going on during the grant process so we don't get hangups and so forth. One of the key things is, we will give you a t-shirt someday of this, is define the project. What are you guys going to do? And so you really want to study, and we'll do deeper dives in other sessions on project description. But the project description is critical for public hearings. It's critical for the citizen to understand what we're doing without a lot of fluff or misleading information or lacking information. So really familiarize yourself with that, with the project description. So it's going to identify what we're doing, where the money's coming from, who owns the project, things like that. So identifying the certified administrator, again, that may be done through a development district or procured some other way. And so try to understand the roles. The last person is your program rep, who's ever helping with that, like a program manager for that area, public works, tourism, economic development, etc. That person's your key contact for all questions and guidance. Let's go to the next slide, citizen participation. So now we've written a good project description. We've covered our legal bases, shall we say. Everybody involved agrees that that's what the project is. So now the local government will have what's known as a citizen participation plan. And in that plan, it's really how do we involve the citizens and keep them informed and aware of what's going on in the project. And it's not just one-time shot. There's several times you may be asking the public for comment, like an environmental review. You may be asking for a public hearing. There's 2 of them where citizens could raise questions or comments, and those have to be, your plan dictates that you have to address those comments and come up with responses to those. So, and one of the things about citizen participation is we may do a public hearing. That project description will be in there. And so the basis of the project description is really, or the hearing notice, is to inform a citizen as to whether they would want to attend the public hearing or not. Maybe there's something controversial or something they'd like to see added or done that they missed. The citizen could attend the public hearing, and that's the goal of the public hearing notice. So we want to make sure there's state laws about public hearing meetings and so forth. But in the CDBG world, there's a first public hearing that we're going to post this or publish it depending on the local community method. And during the project or near the end of the life of the project, we're going to do a second public hearing informing the public of how the project went. Like, say it's almost finished, we spent a little bit more money than we planned, or whatever the fine tuning of the details of the progress and success of that, that's told in the second public hearing. So again, now these hearing notices, by the way, there's more complication of this. For instance, I'll give you just a quick one. If you have a business that's affected by a street closing, it might be a good idea to hand carry or mail them, post a public hearing notice to the owner of the business, for instance. So you're really getting citizens that are affected informed of what's going on. So you're going to also have these hearings. We have community priorities. For instance, if you have a 504 transition plan, which you should have, would be addressing ADA or Americans with Disabilities Act improvements for your city. You should have a plan for that. So when you come in and that could become one of your community priorities, for instance. Fair housing is always emphasized. CDBG will require a 10-year history and something new to further fair housing in your community. Also, there's English is a second language to many citizens, and so you do a 4-factor analysis that's specific to the project and whether you need to translate vital documents. There's often, for instance, some of the job creation forms are done in Spanish and are available now. Not all the 4-factor analysis assesses whether you need to do more work or what you might do in the case that you have a English challenged person. Also, persons with disabilities, there's many programs we have that fit that, and so citizen participation is important to that audience and so forth. And then also ongoing engagement. You're in maybe executing your project with noisy dust and construction zones and things like that, but the community is informed and you're sensitive to all that and so forth. Go to the next slide and I'll take it back to Nicole.
Thanks, Tom. So here is a snip of our CDBG website. And so if you want to learn more or need guidance on how the CDBG program is, we have an admin manual. It is located under the third tab where it says Applications, Guidelines, and Admin Manual. If you click on that, it'll drop down, and we have it. You can either download the whole entire manual, or you can download it by chapters. Go ahead. Next slide, Angie. Angie, I don't think it went. There it is. Okay, on our next slide, also is our guidelines. And so this will give you guidelines on how to do the applications. And so we have, if you look, it's highlighted here, but there's guidelines and exhibits. So guidelines will be posted, as Gina mentioned, early June, and we'll have a webinar on it for the 2025 program or the applications. And then there might be exhibits. And so Angie, if you go to the next slide, there might be specific exhibits that are associated with each opportunity. And so not all of the exhibits apply to each opportunity. There's a couple that are highlighted here. So as I mentioned before, there's a national objective that has to be met. So Exhibit E kind of gives guidance on how to submit those documents to meet the national objective, whether it's low and moderate income, slum and blight, etc. There's also different types of procurement that can be submitted with an application, and that includes whether or not you have an appointee. So if you have a city engineer that's going to be a part of the project, or an appointed city engineer, if you have a development district, or if you're going to do your procurement prior to the application. We do have exhibits for those when you submit the application. Next slide, Angie. This chart just kind of gives where our opportunities were for 2024. And so these were our opportunities that were part of our 2024 application. So downtown revitalization, economic development planning, public works and tourism. These were our maximum and minimum amounts that were based off of our 2024 applications. And so we are unsure if it's most likely that we'll continue this, but again, Gina maybe mentioned we're waiting for congressional allocations to be released. And so we will move forward if we get the same type of allocation that we were awarded for 2024, but we'll just have to, should know more here by end of the month and around that June date. I'm gonna turn it over to Angie.
All right, so you guys just saw a very brief overview of the parts that go into applying for a grant. And I would just offer a perspective as one of the newer members of the team. On that slide that showed all the exhibits, it's easy as a new person to look at that list and maybe be a little overwhelmed by how many exhibits there are that get uploaded as part of the application process. But if you've done a great job up front of identifying your need and being really clear about what your goals are, how you're going to achieve them, then it's kind of like the rest of those exhibits just start falling into place because you've done the hard work up front and you are just fleshing out and providing the information in the way that the program requires it to be provided, whether it's state guidelines or HUD guidelines. You know, those exhibits are just building blocks that you use to flesh out that picture you worked so hard to identify. So we're going to move from the application phase now, and we're going to imagine that you're moving into the scoring phase. So that let's say that for some of those opportunities where their deadline closed on September 15th or the 13th Friday. Hopefully you don't have to work over the weekend to get those in. Now the applications go through their initial review, and that's called threshold review. So did your application coming in meet the baseline requirements? Did you provide us the information that we asked for that's required to qualify as an applicant? And then we take a quick look at your project need, and as Tom was describing earlier, your project description. How clear are you on what it is that you're trying to do? And then we're going to talk about project impact, meaning what is the measurable outcome that's going to result as at the end of this project. Once we do it, so what is who's going to benefit, how many people? That's the impact. Then we're going to take a look at project readiness. So was your public hearing that you did up front, did you have an idea of exactly what you were going to ask for then? Did you ask for that same amount? Are you consistent? Was your citizen participation plan adequate in releasing information to your community? Those are the kinds of things we're going to be taking a look at, as well as whether you've lined up any additional funding sources. And CDBG programs do have a required local match requirement. So for the part that has to be covered by the community, how are you going to do that? And if your project is way more than what we can fund at the CDBG level, how will you cover the gap? Okay, so how hard have you worked to make sure this project can get done for your community? And then finally, we'll share with you a little bit about how that review and then selection process works by the folks that are scoring the applications. Tom?
Actually, it's me. Who is eligible? So every county or municipality is eligible if they have a population less than 50,000. Our thresholds include that the applicant has no significant unresolved audit findings, that the applicant is current with all their reporting requirements, for example, like if they've turned in their semi-annual reports, if they have any program income reports, if they have any closeout reports, audit reports, anything like that. We also want to make sure that the application is complete with the required exhibits. We want to make sure that all of the activities that are listed in the application are eligible, and we do prioritize certain eligible activities to meet our state goals. If any of the application thresholds are not met, then this could disqualify your community as an applicant. I'm going to turn it over to Tom. He's briefly touched on project description, but he'll go into a little bit more detail.
Tom, we're not hearing you. If you want to unmute, we'll have a better shot at this. And
I think you need that.
As I look through the list, I think he maybe got disconnected. Nicole, do you want to do
Yep,
this one?
I will do
Sorry.
this one.
Thank you.
Project needs. So again, we want to make sure we're identifying the purpose and need of the project to clearly articulate what this project is going to do. You'll want to make sure that you have identified your geographical footprint and location. So you'll want to, that is part of the project description, to identify the area that this project will be a part of. A lot of times you'll have to include a map to illustrate this in one of our exhibits. And so making sure, again, that you identify the specific site of the project. Specific activities. So you'll want to identify whether or not you're going to be demolishing, you're going to acquire anything, if there's going to be construction, rehabilitation, or any type of thing. You'll have to disclose that in your project description. Timeline. You'll want to make sure you know what the timeline is. So majority of the CDBG awards are awarded for 30 months, and we try to stick to that due to we have a timeliness on the federal level to expend our funds. And so we want to make sure that the project has a complete timeline to make sure that you're ready. Your budget and funding sources, Angie's kind of already touched on this, but you'll want to make sure that you identify all of those different funding sources that are going to be a part of this project. Displacement, you'll want to make sure if there is anybody that is going to be displaced with the project, you need to self-disclose that. and you need to let people know, whether or not anybody will have to be relocated. You'll have to identify again what your national objective is. Also, you'll want to make sure if there's any citizen concerns, or during that citizen participation, if there was a bunch of concerns that citizens had regarding the project, you want to self-disclose those. Tier 2, this is more for downtown revitalization. So in your environmental review, obviously the environmental review would then be based off of if there's businesses awarded. And so there'll be a tier 2 review of those particular businesses. And then again, kind of looking back at those plans that the community already has, whether it's a comprehensive plan, a downtown revitalization plan, any types of those plans, you'll want to include those as part of your project description on how you identified that purpose and need. Next slide. The next important part about the application is that project impact. And this is extremely important to identify, how this project will fulfill that national objective. What is the measurable units and cost? So if you are a small community and you're wanting a project, how is that going to benefit that community, or those people that live in the community? And is the benefit of investing in that community? Give your reasons why. You'll want to define the success. How are you going to measure whether or not this project will be successful with these funds? And how will the project be tracked? Again, we ask that if you are awarded, you do semi-annual reporting, and that is just to see how the project is defining the success. How are we getting to the finish line? How are we recording whether or not benefits have been, those benefits that have been proposed are meeting those national objectives? And then finally, you'll want to, during your accomplishments and tracking, you'll want to let us know what's the next phase of the project, what's going to be happening in the next 6 months. And so those are all very important within the project impact and how you're going to define success. Project readiness. This is really important, especially during your public hearing. As Tom mentioned, there is a federal requirement that 2 public hearings have to be held regarding federal funds. And we encourage one of those to be held during the application phase, so then let the citizens know what type of project the community is going to be pursuing. So when you are informing the public, you'll want to make sure that you're including factual information, that you're clear on exactly what the project's about. You'll want to be consistent with your project documentation. So whatever is in that public hearing, if you are requesting 400,000, then you'll want to obviously make sure that you're requesting 400,000 in the application. You're not requesting 500,000. You want to make sure that you're very consistent with how you are notifying your public. And that's all part of project readiness. The other part is you'll again want to make sure that your project documentation, so whether it's that description in the public hearing, is what you are planning to apply for. So if you have a street project and you've identified Main Street as the main street that's going to be that you're going to do a street project on, but in the application you've identified a different street, obviously there's inconsistencies there, and we're going to definitely take that into consideration in the scoring aspect of the application. You'll want to make sure that there's no errors. So this means that if there's anything regarding if any land has to be acquired, or if there's any delays within the application, making sure that you've identified if there's any legal requirements that are avoiding any delays within your project. You'll want to, again, provide transparency. So, again, that public hearing is very, very important to make sure that you're notifying that public what the project's about and making sure that you're transparent on exactly what type of project it's about. And you'll want to make sure, again, that you meet those application thresholds to as part of your project readiness. Go ahead, Angie, and we'll move on to Gina.
So you have a project in mind, fantastic. It has a cost to it, and you must identify in your application the source of that funding. So the CDBG grant might be part of it. As Angie has already said, there's a match requirement with all CDBG grants, so that's an amount you have to account for. And then there's probably going to be a gap, perhaps, until you get to your full amount. Tell us how you're going to reach that gap. How are you going to fund that middle section? How are you going to fund that? It's very important. Matching funds can be cash or in-kind by the community as a percentage of grant funds. It can vary by your program. We also like when we see that you have coordinated with other funding sources. So it shows us that you're out and about looking for other assistance. USDA might be one. Community foundations, local fundraising. Show us how you pulled all those resources together. It also speaks to your readiness that you have that money ready. It's not as such that we're trying to pass a bond to get this money and we hope to have it. It speaks again to readiness if you have that money and you know the source of that funding at the time of application.
So part of when an application comes into DED, we obviously, the program manager is going to do that threshold review, making sure again that we meet, that the project is, the applicant's eligible, the project's eligible, the activities are eligible, and we kind of go through that threshold. Then from there, it moves to a review team, and that that review team can either be DED staff or outside state staff. They do a review, and then they meet to have a consensus meeting, and the project is then the projects are then evaluated on priority, and then once it comes out of the committee review, it then goes to our director, who then ultimately has the final say of whether or not the funds can be awarded. And so the applications are reviewed for that award. And then that's when the announcement's made. And if you're not part of our listserv, I would strongly encourage that. We do our press releases via a listserv of who gets the award. Typically, we try to have our awards identified. They're due in September. We try to have them all reviewed and to notification by early November. Again, it kind of depends on the timeline.
All right. So here we are coming into the third major phase of our presentation this morning, and I realize we are so tight on time and we do our best to try to time these in advance, but we missed this one a little bit. So if you're able to stay with us, we sure appreciate it. If not, we completely understand. Please do submit your questions in chat and we will do our very best to follow up with you. So if you have questions for one of us in particular, you are welcome to send a direct chat, but we are going to go ahead and proceed with the rest of our session. This will go pretty quickly here. So we're going to talk about the award process. If you were approved, then what happens next? So we're going to talk about the timeline of what to expect. Nicole shared already that by mid-November, for that first round of applications that were due September 15th, by mid-November, you'll start hearing. We'll talk a little bit more about that threshold review and scoring. And then next, these bullets go in order of what happens here. So the notice of approval, and then steps to do what's called the FFATA, which is a federal disclosure agreement, and then the actual agreement. And when we say agreement here in CDBG land, that you can think of it kind of like the contract between the community that's the awardee, or what we call the subrecipient, and DED. So the agreement is that legal conditions. And then we go into what's called special conditions. And what that is a series of supplemental documents that are required by HUD to make the project successful, that you work with the community to get these special conditions done. Kind of like the application world has application exhibits that flesh out the picture. So alike our special conditions after the award is made, additional criteria that you have to satisfy in order to be eligible for then what's called release of funds after the environmental clearance process is done. All right, Nicole.
This is an overview of our timeline if you are awarded. We do have this available in our manual as a second page in our manual. But this just starts, again, I've mentioned our awards are 30 months. And so once you get awarded or that notice of approval, Then that's when we execute the agreement. We begin, you can begin incurring the cost of general admin. During the next 90 days is when that special conditions happens. And so there is a list of special conditions that need to be completed as part of the award process. Then once you get those completed, as Angie mentioned, it'll go to release of funds and environmental clearance. We want to make sure that the environmental review has been successful. And then that's when you get to start your project, basically. And so during then those months 4 through 24 or even through 30 is when the actual project will be happening. During the end of the project is when we want to see that second public hearing, see some of those reports, final reports being submitted, and then we'll work on monitoring to get the project closed out. We did want to mention, I don't know if Tom got back on, but choice limiting actions. And those of you that are new with federal funds or with CDBG, a choice limiting action is any activity that a grantee undertakes, including committing or expending HUD or non-HUD funds that reduces or eliminates a grantee's opportunity to choose project alternatives that would avoid or minimize environmental impacts or enhance the quality of human environment. So if you have a site that you want to maybe do a project and you will go ahead and purchase the land ahead of time, that could be an example of a choice limiting action. So we just want to make sure that we are addressing any choice limiting actions that would prevent the project from going forward. So if you have a project in mind, again, it's been mentioned this morning, make sure you reach out to your project manager to kind of go through what your project's about, you know, what your ideas are and how we can help you meet your goals in avoiding any choice limiting actions in the process.
Can I add to that, Nicole?
Oh, yep. I'm glad you're back on.
Sorry for jumping off. So be sure choice limiting actions can actually negate your whole project. So be careful. And just a couple more examples would be like if you're going to be cutting down some trees, there's a safe way to do that, and then there's a wrong way to do that. So you want to, that could be an environmental issue. Could be you start moving dirt, which you go, well, we brought some dirt in to level the land. Well, don't do that until you get environmental clearance, because that may be an issue. There may be also, we didn't talk about this, but an aggregated project description might include, say DOR is doing a new highway through the area, and they're going to be putting in new street lamps along with the sidewalk project we're doing. At that point, then you have to make sure that they have their environmental review and yours merged in some way, or at least consistent. So those are all, those limiting actions can be quite an issue if you don't, for the environmental review. And that includes if you're dealing with a business, that they don't start ordering things or hiring people before they get environmental clearance. So be careful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so we are moving to the Q&A session of our program, and I just wanted to suggest that if anybody has any questions, you are certainly welcome to unmute, and I'm going to look through the participants list here to see if anyone unmutes, and I will call on you if I see that your little light is green, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. I don't see any. If someone changes their mind, by all means, put it in chat or unmute, and we'll kind of continue on our way here. So what's next? What are the things that you should have on your radar coming up? The first thing, as we mentioned, is that we hope, given congressional allocation timing, nobody knows when that will happen for sure, but the application guidelines will come out hopefully soon. We hope late May, early June would be when we would normally do it, but it's a little bit different time right now. So the tentative plan is to have a live webinar on June 4th from 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning. So if you are a new person, or maybe you've only been through this application process cycle once before and you would do well with a brush up, there have been some minor changes to some of the programs, and we invite you to join us. That session will be recorded as well. And there is a link for how to register for that event, as well as future CDBG Connect sessions that has just been put in chat by Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. So don't miss out on your opportunity to stay well informed. Then, just to reiterate, that application window, all things, if it's this year like it was last year, we would anticipate opening the application window, the start of our fiscal year for the state year, July 1st. And then you have that application window closing September 15th for the 3 initial ones, which are downtown revitalization. And that's Gina Dews. Gina is the person, if you need a program rep to ask questions about DTR projects, downtown revitalization, that's Gina. Planning is my ballpark. And then last but not least, public works, and that would be Nicole as your primary contact. Again, those windows close September 15th. For economic development and tourism, those stay open year round. Economic development, of course, is Tom Stevens, and tourism is also Nicole as your primary program reps. The certified administrator training, if you are interested in applying for a grant, you have to be certified, and that training usually happens in October. Again, these are the tentative dates here on screen, the 7th, 8th, and 9th here in the Lincoln office in Fallbrook. So you would plan to be in town and attend in person those 3 days if you would like to be certified. So our recordings and resources are always posted on the DED website, specifically on the CDBG page. And if you haven't figured out how to get there, you go to community development, and we're nested under there, so you can find the programs. There's also a link in chat for your convenience. And we are also putting a link, something new we're trying to see what value add we're offering to you, is a link to an online form where you can provide valuable feedback about your experience with today's session. And then that helps inform what we do moving forward for both the application guidelines process, as well as then when we craft additional CDBG Connect calls. So please, 10 brief questions, provide us your feedback so we can give you even more relevant, valuable, helpful information. Next, we want to highlight for you the upcoming CDBG Connect call for next quarter. Okay, session number 3 is going to talk to you about the new progress status reporting process. So every project, as we've been saying this morning, requires semi-annual reporting. So from January 1st through June 30th is one window, and of course that's getting ready to close here soon. And then the second window is from July 1st through the end of the year. Those reports are due by the end of January. So that window is coming up, and we are changing this process. It used to be you would log into Amplifund and you would go up to custom forms, those of you who have done that before, and we are changing this process. We got a lot of valuable feedback from people who said, gosh, this is tricky. Could we do anything to make it a little easier? And we think we've done just that. So thank you to the teams here at DED that have helped work together to bring an even more hopefully elegant and easy, faster, more efficient solution to you. So please be sure to yourself join us and invite others that may need to be here for this. Again, the link to register for that session coming up July 1st is posted in chat. So as we conclude here today, you heard Nicole share with you the importance of staying well informed. If you're not already receiving our press releases, please sign up. You are welcome to use your smartphone's camera to scan this QR code. Go to the DED website and make sure you are signed up to receive important notifications as a stakeholder, as someone who is self-identified as being interested. So this is a snapshot of our teams and who you can contact for more information. With that said, we are going to wrap up today's session. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop the slide and I'm going to pause the recording, and I will